I think you see it, first of all, in Gaza, where he has completely reversed the rhetoric and policies of the Biden team, which had been micromanaging Israel's operational, tactical procedures there. He, of course, the release of the hostages, the Gaza announcement as well, I see as a tremendous marker in the sand.
The fact that President Trump has discussed publicly perhaps going and being part of this peace deal, it's encouraging to even talk about. But what he's doing right now is bringing jobs and investment into the United States with this tour throughout the Middle East.
Let's speak first to Carla Sands, a businesswoman and Republican fundraiser who was President Trump's ambassador to Denmark during his first term of office. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Jeremy.
It's a great pleasure. You're a fan of President Trump, it's fair to say. You served in his first administration as ambassador to Denmark, and you've consistently defended his record across both stints in the White House. Do you think that, given just some of those things I've been describing, President Trump's second term is working?
Well, I dispute some of the things you said, first of all, and I don't want to relitigate the whole issue, but the biggest threat to American democracy was not what you said it was. It was actually the attempt to steal an election by the FBI, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, Joe Biden, and
you're
all
still
of their
sticking to that line, are you?
apparatus. I'm sorry?
You're still sticking to that line?
It's not I'm sticking. The Congress actually did an investigation, and they colluded together. They colluded and attempted to smear. They made up a smear to destroy President Trump's, before he was elected the first time, his reputation, to tie him in and cook up a plan that he was basically working with Russia. They bugged his campaign headquarters. Then they spied on him when he was in the White House. It is a scandal, and I haven't seen anyone held accountable. The American people who voted for President Trump are looking for accountability. So if with punishment will come deterrence so that that doesn't happen again. But we're also looking for deportations like you talked about. We want to see deportations of illegal immigrants. There were over 10 million people deported, I think it was, under Bill Clinton. There were millions deported under Barack Obama. But President Trump, in his fulfilling his campaign promise to deport, has been stopped by these lower level courts and even the higher level courts in the United States. So the courts are trying to behave like another executive branch and trying to override the elected head of the U.S. government. So I don't think it will stand. I do believe that President Trump will get to deport people, but really the American people are looking for those deportations.
Yeah. So with all that in mind, would you say that the first 4 months or so of his presidency have been successful?
They've been incredibly successful. Why? Because the border's quieter. It's down to almost zero crossings. I just learned that Keir Starmer is intending to reduce the illegal immigration into the UK to preserve your beautiful culture so that it's not taken over by strangers who don't share values with the people of the UK. I mean, that's a wonderful start, but I think that there are other things that the UK could do to strengthen your economy, just as President Trump is doing. For instance, a best of the above energy policy so that you leave that net zero, anti-human deindustrialization agenda behind and use UK natural gas, allow fracking, UK coal. There are so many ways you can provide cheap and abundant energy to the people and businesses in the UK and still protect your environment.
Okay. Let's talk for a moment about Ukraine, if we can. I think the whole 1 day, 100 days thing we can forgive Mr. Trump for because nobody ever really believed it. But he has consistently, with the exception of one day when Russia sent missiles into Kyiv, given the impression of being someone, I suppose, more philosophically aligned with President Putin than with President Zelensky. Isn't the truth, though, that he's being played by Moscow, which has no intention and will never agree to a peace deal other than one that will leave Ukraine humiliated and unable to defend itself?
Well, I disagree with what you just said. I'm sorry, but he certainly understands Putin and how he's a former KGB intelligence officer who knows how to work people. He will not be played like people like Joe Biden was played, or sorry to say, George W. Bush was played. President Trump understands the person on the other side of the table in a deal, and that goes for Zelensky, and that goes for Vladimir Putin.
But does he respect? Sorry to interrupt. Does he respect President Putin more than President Zelensky?
It's not for me. That would be speculation. I believe that President Trump wants to end the war. That I do know, and so I can say he wants to end the bloodshed and the war. And wouldn't peace be a wonderful thing? So it sounds like there's a possibility. I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm a little skeptical that things can come together so quickly without a lot of sticks and a lot of carrots. So we'll see what happens this week. But the fact that President Trump has discussed publicly perhaps going and being part of this peace deal, it's encouraging to even talk about. But what he's doing right now is bringing jobs and investment into the United States with this tour throughout the Middle East.
You recently accused the new Prime Minister of Greenland, Frederik Nielsen, of, I'm quoting you here, trying to go to war with Mr. Trump because he resists the idea that his nation, which has been under the protection of the Kingdom of Denmark for more than 200 years, should be sold to the US and carved up for its mineral wealth. Why should a country hand itself over to the United States simply because the president says it should be so? Is that the new price of NATO membership as Mr. Trump sees it?
You know, that's not what I was trying to say at all. What I was trying to say, to clarify, is that Greenland hasn't been secure. Since there are more pressures from Russia and China in the Arctic region, a rise in their military power, but also in their economic coercion, especially with China, Greenland's not secure. And Denmark doesn't have even a hope of securing Greenland because they don't have the capacity. You know, in NATO agreement, there's something called Article 3, and it is that every member nation will have the ability to defend themselves, their territory, their area of responsibility. And there are these giant seas around Greenland and the Faroe Islands. It's in the Arctic and subarctic that Denmark doesn't even have awareness what is on the sea or under the sea, let alone being able to defend it. And then the giant land, the world's biggest island, they have no idea what's on that island and what's going on, except for where there are a couple of dog sled teams and then helicopters and planes. They really don't have an awareness or an ability to defend that nation, and they've never bothered to develop it. They haven't really cared that much, but it's just since President Trump brought attention to Greenland that Denmark now seems to care.
Okay. Well, you are the former US ambassador to Denmark, so we take your words there under advice. Thanks very much, Carla Sands.
Pleasure talking to you.
Journalists. Pleasure talking to you too. Mr. Trump has embarked on his first tour of the Middle East since his re-election, during which he's visiting Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, and Saudi Arabia in a trip that's it's said has been designed more for deals than diplomacy. Earlier today, he met Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, and reports suggest that an agreement for Saudi Arabia to buy more than $100 billion of US arms and other military equipment could be on the table. Let's speak now then to Jacob Olidort, Director of the Center for American Security at the America First Policy Institute, which is the spiritual home, if you like, for Trump's brand of republicanism. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jeremy, for having me.
It's a great pleasure. Now, there's no doubting the importance of Mr. Trump's trip to his administration. He wants Gulf money invested in the US, including through the purchase of military equipment. And there's a phalanx of CEOs from top American companies at the Saudi-US Investment Forum in Riyadh. Everyone understands that the president casts himself as a deal maker. What's he agreed so far, and what sort of deals do you think he's going to strike over the next few days?
Well, this is going to be a historic visit to a very important region, as it always has been in history. But already in just about 100 days, President Trump has been deeply engaged in this region, from obviously, Saudi Arabia hosting the a round of the Ukraine talks, to the Iran negotiations, to, of course, the very happy news we celebrated here in the United States yesterday of the release of one of our own from captivity in Gaza. So there's a lot of moving parts here. And of course, perhaps later this week, Turkey hosting a round of talks to end the Ukraine war as well. So many moving parts in the region, many accomplishments already that the president has initiated in his first 100 days. And I think this will be a continuation of that trajectory.
The trip takes place amid some economic headwinds, it's fair to say. The president's new import tariffs have disrupted global trade, confidence, even his own economy. Are you worried that some of the Gulf leaders will have taken note and perhaps will be a little more nervous than they would otherwise have been to do business?
I don't for a minute think that. I mean, that's only a partial story. The other part is, of course, the historic deals that this administration has already made with the United Kingdom. And then, of course, now with China. It's important to remind your listeners and viewers that under the previous administration, there have been no trade deals negotiated by the United States and other countries. So this is resetting, if you will, the landscape and negotiating and completing those deals amid, obviously, other foreign policy priorities.
Yesterday, The Times revealed that President Trump is planning to ease US sanctions on Syria after overtures from President Ahmed al-Sharaa, who's offered concessions, including access for American companies to exploit natural resources, a bit like Ukraine. Washington continues to designate al-Sharaa a terrorist, and indeed it was reported they were due to meet, although the White House has denied those rumours. Now, you wrote in a recent report for the America First Policy Institute that engagement with the new Syrian president risks bolstering his legitimacy by suggesting that the US acknowledges his position as the governing power in the country. Does that mean you still think all of this would have been a mistake?
Well, what I wrote in that piece, in another part of that piece, was that engagement without conditions would be wrong. And, obviously no official statement has come out from the White House. The president suggests that he may potentially ease sanctions. This is a very complex situation. We have multiple partners around the world engaging with the Sharaa for various reasons in different capacities. And so, and he reportedly, Sharaa has made several promises. I cautioned in that piece about taking somebody for their word, which I don't believe is the case here. So I think this is something that the president and his team are rightfully approaching with caution, but with the right degree of openness and strategic instinct.
You've been quite flattering about the achievements in the Middle East of the second Trump administration so far. You wrote that he's already made formidable strides in the path towards enduring peace and stability in the region. Can you explain why you think that is?
Absolutely. I think you see it, first of all, in Gaza, where he has completely reversed the rhetoric and policies of the Biden team, which had been micromanaging Israel's operational, tactical procedures there. He, of course, the release of the hostages, the Gaza announcement as well, I see as a tremendous marker in the sand and really pushing partners around the world to come up with a plan, thinking about Gaza's future. And then, of course, Iran negotiations. That's the
Gaza Riviera you're referring to, yeah?
That's right, which he has repeated on several occasions. Egypt has put forth a plan backed by the Arab League and several European partners. It is sufficient in some respects, not in others, but it's important to remind viewers and listeners that nobody cared to talk about Gaza. This was priority number 5 or something at a third stage of negotiations of the ceasefire. So he prioritized this. This is all part of taking the reins over a region in turmoil, in war, and bringing about peace and stability in an enduring manner. And I think we're seeing this play out.
Yeah, but you suggest in the report that actually that Riviera approach might be extended throughout the region. How realistic is that really, though, given that even if the Americans' Arab partners like the idea of planting stars and stripes every which way, in addition to Hamas, you have Hezbollah in Lebanon, an uncertain state of affairs in Syria, you've got Yemen and Iran perhaps not as strong as it once was, but nevertheless squatting over all of them.
Right. And let's not forget the West Bank either, where, of course, Iran has been plotting over the last 3 years and has escalated, witnessing its diminished footprint around the region. All of this, of course, is highly iterative and evolving. But, as you rightly point out, Hezbollah is very much down, if not almost out. In Lebanon, a new government obviously takes a different approach to the future of their country. We will see what happens with Syria, but I think there are opportunities, as I've written, on the periphery there, at least in the interim. I think a lot of this depends on how all the next steps in the region play out. I think that the most immediate, of course, is everybody waiting for the outcome of these negotiations over Iran's nuclear program. So the president has set a timeline for that, after which he would turn to other options if diplomacy does not work. So I think that is the immediate area of focus. But of course, everything will ripple from there.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks very much. That's Jacob Olidort, Director of the Centre for American Security at the America First Policy Institute. Thanks for joining us.